Perfect. All right. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. The August 2025 meeting of the OWASP Global Board is now called to order. I will start with roll call. The list I have in front of me, Steve,
Yes, here.
Harold,
Here.
Sam,
Here.
Ashwini,
Here.
Avi,
Here.
Diego,
Here.
and Ricardo, myself, is here. Great. Great to see you all, and welcome to our guests. Welcome to the staff. Let's see here. Give me 2 ticks. Bearing myself in Windows here. All right. As the board consists of individuals from many competing organizations, OWASP and its board shall abide by all applicable antitrust and competition laws to avoid any perceived or actual conflict of interest or antitrust concerns under U.S. federal, state, or regulations. Only the published agenda shall be discussed or voted upon or amended as below. If, therefore, there are any conflicts of interest, board members are expected to disclose the conflict of interest and must recuse themselves from the discussion and voting. So I'm going to take a moment right now and ask if there's anyone who wants to declare anything at this point. And I think we're good for that. I now will ask the board members if there are any proposed changes to our agenda for today. I know I have one. I think there might be 1 or 2 more. No? No one else? All right.
Chat. Let me just see what was happening there.
All right. Well, the one I propose is actually the formation of an audit committee. I believe we can have a very short discussion right at the end of our meeting today. I think it will be beneficial for the organization if we do spin up an audit committee and give them powers to look into things on the board's behalf and report back to us. So can I get any support for maybe this discussion at the end of our meeting agenda here?
Absolutely.
I'll second that, but for change of agenda, you don't need a second.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure that we wanted to discuss this item, but thank you, Avi. Appreciate that. All right, great. We will discuss that. Are there any other discussions or motions that anyone wants to raise at this point?
Yeah, I'd like to propose a discussion regarding the project summit, because my understanding is that there's been a change since the last board meeting, and see what is the change and why it happened.
Okay, I'll be interested to discuss that as well. Andrew or Dawn, would you please note those 2 items just to make sure that we don't lose track of them, please?
Yeah,
Thank
written
you.
that down.
Thank you. All right. I now will ask for the approval of the July 2025 minutes. Again, I need to pull up my list of folks. Hopefully all the directors have read the minutes. I will go in the same direction that I went before. Steve?
Yes.
Harold?
Abstain.
Is that a yes?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Oh, abstain. Okay, sorry. Sam?
Yes.
Ashwini?
Yes.
Avi?
Yes.
Diego?
Yes.
And it's a yes for myself, Ricardo. Great. Thank you all for that. Got up another window. Sorry, I can't really see that all that well, so I'm using my own window here. Andrew, can you take us into the management reports, please?
Sure. I'll put it up there. Got a fair amount. I might make this into, if that's too small, is that too small? Because I can divide it into 2 slides really quickly. I
Yes,
might do
please.
that. Just, yep.
Some of us are old.
No tape back.
Okay. Okay, so at the beginning of this month, I took late last month, early this month, I took some leave. When I came back, I started sorting out what was actually important because I was realizing that we weren't achieving any deliverables. We were achieving operational stuff and we are doing okay, but we weren't moving forward with a lot of deliverables. So we really need to focus in on the things that are really important for the rest of the year and achieve on delivering them. And I think, to my mind, that's the website migration, which is nearly done. We're waiting upon a revision to the actual website that contains some of the QA notes that I've given them. The 25th anniversary, we're meeting as a staff every couple of weeks to move that forward. We need to start promoting that within the community. We need to start getting that to our corporate supporters and get that out there. We absolutely need to get our new entity running as soon as we possibly can, as soon as the Belgian government has approved it. They have still not approved it as of right now. AppSec DC is coming up. We need to make sure that goes off without a hitch. That usually does take the staff attention quite significantly during the month leading up to that. And it is at the beginning of November. So the reality is that we need to really make sure that we deliver that in as best as we possibly can. At the moment, registrations are running in line with where we previously had been having in DC a couple of years ago, and I think it'll go off really well, but we need to make sure that it's achieved. And there is the social policy contract gap analysis. This is something that's come up in the last month or so with a particular supplier, but there are other suppliers who ask us the same things on a regular basis. And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to figure out what is the gap between what we do at the moment versus what we need to change. I don't think it'll take a lot. We're fairly close, but it needs to happen and we need to do it. Some other things may need to take a back burner, but I think honestly we do need to get through some policy reviews. I did reach out to Sam a little while ago to talk about policy reviews, and I must admit I haven't followed up with Sam on that. So we do need to start pushing through the policies we'd like to see reviewed this year and make sure that they actually happen, involving our community. Now, there are some which will require, like Arvy's one, with the directors and elections policy, we need to get that through. I think that's an important one to get through this year. But there's others as well. So I'll work with Sam on trying to get that set up. But we are a staff of 8 delivering more business as usual than ever before. But at the same time, we do need to get through and deliver some things that we've agreed that will get done. So I think prioritization and making sure that we're actually doing the things that we say we will do is actually really important. And there are some things that we'd like to do, but we'll try to get to them, but they shouldn't take away from delivering on the other things. So I do want to just sort of reach out to you, and if there's things that you think that are falling through the cracks that are, maybe really important for you, we need to talk about where it fits in the priority list. And I think that's a really good discussion to have. And maybe that's a discussion you could feed through Steve and Ricardo. We meet every other week. And I think it'd be really quite important to make sure that we've got that priority aligned. Yeah, Ashwini.
Yeah, so I was just curious on where we were with our marketing hire for the 25th anniversary.
Yeah. I'm trying to organize those hires at the moment. I've talked to Harold about when his availability is to do some final interviews. We do have some final candidates that I'd like to get through. That's the first ones that I would like to hire. I think, honestly, with the candidates that we've got for the Director of Corporate Relations at the moment, we might have an opportunity there. I need to talk that over with Harold at some length before we go, but I think we may need to go to the market and actually push that advert out onto LinkedIn and then deal with the multiple hundreds, if not thousands of CVs that we'll receive as a result. There are candidates that we've received that are very high quality, but are very much out of our pay bracket. I would love to have any of the people who've applied so far. I just think that, we are a non-profit and we have to keep an eye on making sure that we're actually getting the right person in the role. but also at a price we can afford. There is that. I really want to move forward on the marketing one. I think that's a gap that we really do have at the moment, and we do have Heather filling in, and she's been very capable. And at the end of the day, from a hiring perspective, I think let's get the marketing person on board. I think we could use the talents straight away. Let's then move on to the director of corporate relations, but let's make sure that we've actually got the right candidate and the right price. Okay. With the 25th anniversary, I think one of the things that we're going to kick the year off with is global community. And I think one of the things that an earlier version of these slides, which you may have seen, I said that it may need reform. The reality is that we need to think about how do we get the next 100 chapters in the places we don't have chapters at the moment. It's not just making sure that our current chapters actually meet and do things. They are meeting. One of the things that we've got coming up is increased chapter expenses, which is actually a good thing. It's actually showing that we've got increased activity, which is a really good thing. That's exactly what we want. But what we also want is more chapters in places like Sydney, where we should have a chapter. I'm not just talking about Sydney. I'm talking about in places like Asia, the Pacific, Indonesia, Africa, South America, and places like that, where we may not have chapters in places that theoretically we should have. So how do we get those next few chapters? And I think next year is a perfect opportunity for us to do outreach to people who may be thinking about running a chapter, who haven't thought about it to this point. We try to figure out how do we actually enable those people to run chapters without creating too much burden on us as an organization. And to that end, we do need to think about that chapter review process as well, because we do have some chapters which take up a lot of our time, who don't necessarily meet as often as we'd like, and the things that they're getting up to aren't necessarily the things that we'd like them to do. So I think at some point we should do a chapter audit, just simply to make sure that we've got the right chapter policy in place, and that the chapters that are existing sort of live within the guidelines, so that we don't have to spend so much time coming backwards and forwards on chapter policy, expenses and things like that. As I said, there are some chapters who meet very regularly, and their expenses are very high. And then so we've got some new chapters who've been doing things like CTFs and stuff like that, which should be more like mini events. So we'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, the 25th anniversary should be about bringing us together and bringing more people into the fold. And so that's what I think we need to bring our themes into. We will be running a September membership drive. You'll see a lot of social media. I'd really appreciate it if you could push, like, repost things as they get posted. What we'll be doing is doing a bit of a, get involved, make your voice count. So around the election, to involve people to, become a member so they can vote. And that will be the theme of the vote, of the actual membership drive, is, help support us with becoming part of our community, and helping improve our governance and selecting our next board, because we have 4 seats up for grabs next year. And one of the things that is always very disappointing is that we have such low turnout, and there's nothing we can really do to encourage turnout except to have more people vote. And I think getting people excited to be involved in the actual election is going to be important. So that's where we're doing the membership drive. I've got some slides on the membership audit. I'll talk about that in a tick. The website migration, we're going to be doing the main website. It is not every single page. There will be some content that won't be there in the initial part. We're not losing that content. It's still going to be on GitHub. But what we need to do is make sure that the things that we need to have there are accessible from day one, and the things that we'd like to have there are there as soon as we possibly can. So this is why I think, focusing our energies on 1 or 2 things and getting them done really well is really important, because it's such a high profile change. This will be, The new website is already in many ways much better than our existing website. And one of the problems that we've got is people will be disappointed that their little favorite part of the website may not be there. And so we need to figure out, okay, is that the right thing to migrate next? So I've got a couple of questions, hands up in the air. We've got Avi.
Yeah, a quick question about the membership drive. Excuse me, are you explicitly going to call out the lifetime membership and encourage that, especially with the upcoming price increase?
We can, absolutely.
What's the timeline on the price increase for the lifetime
We've got
membership?
to get it, we've got to put the price up by January of 2027. That was in the vote was decided.
Yeah, the suggestion was to do it gradually, like to have a few jumps.
Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely get there. So Ricardo.
Yeah, what date can we expect the website to go live?
I would have liked to have gone live already, but I'm not going to go live with it while it still doesn't have some of the key features that we need, like linkages to the board reports, our policies, and things like that, because we need those on a very regular basis. So I will work with getting that pushed through. It's just really, as I said, there are some parts of it that aren't there at the moment, and if we can accept that there will be some pushback from some of the community about some parts of it missing, then we can live with that because it works. It looks good. But at the same time, we need to make sure that there's enough of it that we don't lose some key functions like being able to discover where the next chapter meeting and things like that are. So we need to get that in place.
So would it be safe to say that we can expect it in the next 30 days?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Sam.
Yeah, my question is on our website as well, because I was just trying to emphasize that we need to make sure that we preserve the old links, because obviously Google has indexed a lot of our content, including policies and board information, using the old links. Just make sure that all the redirects are in place, Andrew, because I believe last week there were quite a few broken links if you search on Google. I think today I've done a couple of searches. Looks like it is improved, but obviously a week ago, a lot of community members were hitting 404. Not just anyone interested in OWASP, they would come and click on links on the website, and I would be seeing 404 not found instead of the content.
Yeah, so what's happened there is that I had to spend a fair amount of time in the policies and board areas because they moved into their own subdomains to fix up that. What now needs to happen is a new site.xml needs to be created that actually refers to the correct sites so Google can find it. I believe the redirects are in place. Like if you go to www.board, it redirects you. But at the end of the day, basically, Google tends not to follow those. So we need to actually encourage it to learn about some of the linkages. I think some of that will improve over time. I'll make sure that when we get to the new website, a new site XML is actually created. We're not trying to migrate all of the information that's there, and that's where I think some of the problems will creep in. We've moved policies on board very deliberately. What we need to do now is actually figure out what else is still needing to be moved that is on our current website. And I think it's governance and finance are the two main ones that are not there at the moment.
Right. I just want to make sure that to highlight that a lot of our sort of deep links into some of the OWASP content is also embedded in a lot of government information, like for example, in the NIST guidelines, in NIST frameworks, European Union government information. There's a lot of references and links to OWASP content, just to make sure that the legacy links are preserved in the form of the redirects to the new content.
Yeah, we'll investigate the Google Search Console. And we'll make sure that the greatest links there are. Some of our top links are into www community, which is a site that we weren't planning on migrating, but we need to make sure that you can still get to it. So we do have somebody deeply linking into something in the www community repo. It's our top referrer.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's sort of enough for that. Let's move on to the next slide. I've deleted the second part Let me just do undos. Okay. One of the problems that we've been having over the last couple of months, and it's still present in this month's management report, is uncategorized conference income. Part of the problem is that GlueUp is being used for events and it's also used for membership. And it doesn't make it easy for us to be able to determine which is which. And so at the end of the day, there is a process which is being developed. What's going to happen is that we're going to work together. Star, Heather, not Heather, Lauren and Dawn will work together with Charity CFO. We've got a process. It just needs to be documented. The previous version of this process didn't include membership, so it needs to be revised slightly. That process has categorized a lot of the additional training that was incorrectly done. So that's been holding us up. And I think at the end of the day, it's not a long or difficult conversation. It just needs to happen. And then for that process to be undertaken every month, we need to have it completed by the 6th of every month. Yeah, Ricardo.
Yeah. This is something I've heard before. I think we said this, you said that at the previous meeting. We're now about 30 days later and we're still using that same statement that we're gonna get this thing fixed.
Yeah.
Could you tell me within the next 15 to 30 days if you think that's enough time for this thing to be resolved?
I would certainly hope so. I mean, at the end of the day, basically, the process, we've got a process, we know it exists. What needs to happen is it needs to be productionized so that essentially it happens every month by the right individuals. And then that's fed through to Charity CFO so that the information can be correctly relayed to Charity CFO so they don't need to enter things twice. At the moment, what's happening is if there's any sort of issues with making sure that the numbers match, then the uncategorized income doesn't really go in, down. Now, overall, the membership training and events numbers for income are correct, but they're not categorized correctly. Now, this can be resolved, and I really do hope that it can be resolved within that time frame that you've just mentioned. We've got an upcoming uncategorized report due on the beginning of the month, and we've got 5 or 6 days to respond to it. I would hope that we're actually checking out this new process and making sure that it happens this month, and then hopefully by the September financial report, we can finally see the correct numbers in events, in training, and in membership.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I'll be looking for it at the next board meeting.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so chapter expenses. Ricardo, you did mention this. You wanted to have a little bit of investigation. I did a bit of digging today. I was indisposed for some of the day, and I do apologize that I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I think I may need to delve into a little bit more detail into the JIRA tickets to figure out what's really happening. But one of the problems is that when you look at JIRA, it presents a number to you, but doesn't present the currency. So some of the numbers there I was startled at, and then I found out they were Indian rupees. Others are like, you shouldn't have to click into a record to find out the total number, but JIRA is not an accounting system. It's literally a way for us to approve tickets. So what's been happening is that we have had a number of chapters with expenses that have been a bit higher than expected. 2 of them in particular, and they've applied for a pre-approval. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do those pre-approvals. They are bringing in sponsorship and they're bringing in conference income through the Snowfrock, which will then basically make their monthly expenses go a little bit easier. But so we're not just saying that, yes, expenses are up. The volume of tickets is also up. We had 143 in total in 2024. We're already up to 107 this year. So we're on track to having around 180, 190 odd expenses this year. And that's not a bad thing. That means more chapters are meeting. Most of the expenses are pre-approved, not pre-approved, but approved on the spot, just simply because they're within policy. Yeah. So
Great.
the problem might be that we just need to keep an eye on how much they're spending versus the budget. And if we need to start thinking about, do we need to allocate more money to the budget? Like I'll talk to Harold and say, we might need another 10 or 15,000 here. Or can I take the pre-approvals for the 2 chapters I'm talking about off the table and free up that budget? Because we've got some income coming in. So, okay, working groups. I need to chase up Christian to find out how we're going on creating working groups, the actual infrastructure for it. I was hoping that it would already be done by now. I have approved a number of working groups, but the main thing is they can meet. We just need them to actually have like a project or similar so that they can actually have a GitHub repo for themselves, similar to the way the top 10 does it, which generates their website. So what we need to do is finish up that operationalization process. But I felt that because the elections were coming up, we really need to get on top of this membership audit rather than finish up this other thing. They're both important. I really want these working groups to meet. But at the same time, we really needed to make sure that we could actually have an election this year with a accurate membership list. So I'm sorry for the delay in that one, but it was unavoidable in my view. The committee update
Steve has his
calendar.
hand up. Sorry.
sorry?
Sorry to interrupt. Steve has his hand up.
Oh yeah, Steve.
Yeah, does the new website actually take into consideration committees and working groups?
I've asked for that to be one of the things that's needed to be changed. Yes.
Okay, and when are we expecting the working groups to be fully operationalized?
Honestly, I was sort of hoping by now. I will get with Christian this week and try to figure out how do we make this happen, whether we just simply, just in the meantime, we've only got about 3 or 4 of them. So get them up and running and then figure out a proper process that can be automated, which would be my hope. But at the end of the day, basically, as I said, we've only got 3 or 4 of them. It's just a matter of getting back to the individuals who've actually asked for these things to be stood up and get them to actually start meeting. We can create the Google groups, we can create the Slack channels for them and things like that today. What's not easily done right now is they're not a chapter, they're not a project, but it's sort of similar to the way the OWASP Top 10 runs, which has its own website. We just need to get that happening.
Thank you.
No worries. Ricardo asked about committee updates, and I think the best way of doing that is that we establish a calendar for them, and we basically, on a regular basis, we just make sure that the officers are invited, and we make sure that that actually happens. So I'm planning on doing that as one of those things, and I'll get that happening this month so that we can basically always have a committee willing to present. We don't have committees that would take up, like we would probably recycle committees throughout the year. If we don't have 12 committees is what I'm getting at. But if you want to hear from working groups, then that's the perfect opportunity for the working groups to be slotted in at some point as well. We'll try to work that detail through. We do need to do the chapter review. We've talked about that. We need to do the social contract policy and gap analysis. And I think the social contract policy is one of those policies that we need to work on and get through with community review. I do think at the end of the day, there are a significant number of changes to what many people believe we do versus what we actually do. And so I think getting our community on board with those changes will be very, very helpful. And again, I've talked about Sam and I getting together to start organizing the policy reviews and get the policy review back together. Okay, membership audit. I do want to keep it moving because we're already half an hour in. The membership audit, we basically had a couple of people, including some prominent community members, not the least of which was Steve, who had his lifetime membership was not quite right. We also had another prominent member pipe up that his membership wasn't right, and this really worried me. I mean, how big was this problem? And the only way for us to find out was I commissioned a integrity audit. I wanted to make sure that the records that we have on hand, and realistically, we'll talk about how we do that. There is an entire document. If the board wants to delve into that document, I'm very happy to share it with you. It is detailed. It goes into every use case that we actually looked at. It goes into ones that had no issues whatsoever, but we needed to check. From my perspective, the membership audit shows us that GlueUp is not unreliable or faulty. The problem really is, and we'll talk about that in a tick. I'll just show it to you. Our previous system, which Harold helped build, relies upon Stripe for payments, and it's also pretty much the primary source of truth for our tooling. We do have some tools that use Copper, but most of them use Stripe. There has always been differences with Stripe and Copper. Unfortunately, Copper was also the place where the membership lists were exported from that were then used for elections. And we always knew there was differences in the total number of members that Stripe believed in versus the total number of members that Copper believed in. And so from time to time, generally when people log tickets, we fix those things up. Was it ever perfect? No. At the end of the day, what really happened is that from time to time, records would get a little bit corrupted or had inconsistencies. And one of the biggest ones we found was we had 13 lifetime members that had end dates. And that's because they were members beforehand, but they weren't having their membership end date scrubbed off when they became a lifetime member for some reason. This should have affected every lifetime member generated in the lifetime of the previous system, but it wasn't. It was just 13 records. But we were able to identify those 13 records and fix them. So they're now in GlueUp. But there were also 1 and 2 years records that were checked through as well. And so we've actually identified, I'll just put this in. We didn't want to have garbage in, garbage out. We could have imported every single record that's in Copper or every single record that's in Stripe, but then we would have a problem in GlueUp. And that problem wouldn't have been sorted out because a membership record that for a lifetime member that has an end date, we don't know what GlueUp would do with that. They would probably say that their membership has ended. So we would still probably be in the same problem, but then, we just didn't want that to happen. So there were 12 other issues that were unique or one-offs that we've been able to identify through this process. And so those have been fixed, except for where they could not be resolved. For example, we had users during the migration process who had their membership had not been renewed at the time, so they were in suspension. We didn't import those records because they weren't members at the time. So GlueUp is the correct solution. They need to renew their membership. And so what we need to do is we fix up the ones we could identify. We don't believe this to be a widespread issue. It's 0.2% of all records. Okay, so that's a very low number. We fixed up the ones that we could identify that through additional looking, but the rest of them are just going to have to log tickets and get them resolved on the way that we used to do it back in 2019 through to 2024 was if there was a problem, people logged tickets, we fixed the problem and everybody moved on. All we need to do is get a receipt from Stripe that says, yes, you've paid, and we'll move on. We'll create the record, no problems. But we believe that there should be no more of those where they would have had a receipt. We're reasonably certain of that now. The rest of it really comes down to really unusual corner cases in the data that just simply meant that it got swept up with all the other records. So if you're interested in the detail of all of the tests that we've done and the things that we've done to try to identify people who've been lost, we've been very thorough with this. I don't believe it to be a huge problem. It's certainly it's getting better. The problems that we identified, none of them were in glue up. They were all with data that was old. So I I believe all of the problems that we've identified were previous to the migration. Since the migration, people have not been stopped from renewing. They've been able to renew their, like join. They've been able to get their accounts created and all those sorts of things. We're at a reasonably steady level of membership tickets. The membership tickets were processed when Hayden got back from his travels. And so we're all caught up with those tickets. Yeah, Ricardo.
Yeah. Again, I'm hearing a lot of repetition here. We've gone through a few glue up challenges in the last couple of board meetings I'm hearing.
Mhm.
And then in the statement in your slide, you're saying there's not an issue with glue up. In my mind, if you reported issues, you've re you've said that you fixed something, then there was an issue with it, right? And this keeps coming up every month. So how confident are you that this is kind of the end of the road? Because I'm liking that it's such a low number, but I don't want to come next month and you say there's another issue with glue up. Let me phrase it like this. Do you need anything from the board to help you with this issue? Be it contract with glue up to take a look at the system, maybe to fix it up how we need it, or are you confident that everything you've done so far up until this point in time is suitable to carry the system forward?
The thing that I might need the board's assistance with is when we come to our renewal next year, and if we still don't have chapter functionality in GlueUp, I would
Mhm.
like to get you guys involved in basically saying, look, we paid for this on the basis that we would have this sort of functionality.
Mhm.
This is our shared understanding of that, and we've asked for some changes and it hasn't happened. That's something I think the board can get involved with. I think the data quality issues should be behind us and we're in one-off territory. The only way for us to identify this one-off territory is for people like, for example, Adrian, to come forward and say, look, something's not right, and we'll deal with it. Adrian happened to be one of those people who got caught up with his membership wasn't in the right state during the actual migration itself,
Mhm.
but he had a receipt. So the only way for us to resolve that migration like 5 or 6 times at different points, and I think honestly, it would have affected a very minimal number of people. I think we're actually okay now. I was really worried when I went into this that we had a bigger problem, and none of the problems
Mm.
point to a glue up problem. It points to the data migration side of things here.
Okay. Definitely will
So,
support you. One more piece of advice though, if there is an issue, especially with the chapters, I would tend to address that now. I wouldn't wait for a renewal period, only because then some folks might get a little salty between now and that renewal period time frame. So just some
yeah,
advice. But
yeah,
here to support you. All right.
yeah, no,
If you don't mind keeping it moving.
okay.
Like you said, we're 45 minutes into this thing now.
Yeah, no worries. I take it that people have actually read the things. Is everyone, I think honestly, has everyone managed to look at the slides?
Yeah. So one question about the audit real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it's running a little bit behind. Can we do anything to make up that time?
We're providing the information that they're asking for in as timely a fashion as we can. We keep on asking the questions like there are a couple of things for the 990, which is due in November, which is some of the last field work that we need to provide for them to finish up. I don't believe there's anything that we're waiting upon to speed up the actual audit part of the process. But at the end of the day, basically, I will chase that up with Dawn and our auditors after this. And if there's any issues, I've got a meeting with Harold this coming his Friday. I'll bring them up with Harold.
Okay.
Okay. I don't believe so. I still believe we'll get the audit and the 990 done before November. I really want to kick off the budgeting process for 2026 with Charity CFO as soon as I possibly can. And once they've finished their part of the field work, I want to start engaging them on that budgeting process. So that's one of the biggest topics that I'll have with Harold this coming Friday. Okay. Has everyone watched the management report video?
Yes.
Were there any questions? Is anyone from Charity CFO here? I see a thumbs up from Avi.
Let me see. I don't see.
No, there's no Chris, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not receive a realistically, the thing that Ricardo you brought up was the uncategorized expenses. We did really well this year, this month, and I hope to repeat it again in September. Everybody got their stuff in on time, and we had less than 3K of uncategorized expenses, which is a historic low for the entire time that I've ever been treasurer or executive director. That's actually a really low number. So very pleased with that, and I'm glad that the staff actually did the right thing and categorized their expenses as quickly as they did.
Perfect. Thank you all. The other question I had was the AR report.
Yes.
That figure is, if you wouldn't mind blowing that up, that looks minuscule to me. The 90 days and over, that figure looks really high. So what's our risk with that?
Some of it's actually to do with quotes that were prepared for the projects, like donations that were invoiced but were speculative. So what we need to do is sit down with Star and Dawn and go through the list. Dawn, go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me. I started working on it, but with all the uncategorized, I have to get with Andrew. I have a list that needs to be removed that a quotes will drop it down. I feel confident in at least 95% of it will get the funds. Some of these bigger ones, it's a matter of following up. So I did last week send out a bunch, and I actually got money in, but this report was after that. So I probably got last week about 50 grand, 60 grand in for the small amount I did. So without all the other stuff, I'm out the rest of the week after today. But next week, this is the priority because the other stuff is caught up. So, but yeah, just the small amount I did last week, several, I got 50 to 60,000 in. Low
Perfect.
on this number. So I do feel the money and the quotes will come off. But a lot of it is collectible.
Yeah. What we need to do is make sure that every single time that we ever put something out there with an invoice number on it has some sort of signed agreement so that we can actually collect the funds. That's the problem we've got with these invoices that were sort of speculative. If we don't have a signed agreement, there's no requirement for them to pay. And after 90 days, we should just drop it because it's not funds we can collect. We haven't provided any service. We don't owe them anything. They don't owe us anything. It's not real money, and it's just upsetting the overall AR.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my
No
question.
problem. No worries. And yes, we do have a very busy schedule, so I will return it back to you. We've got the chapter committee.
Thank you very much. Yes. So we have the chapter committee here. Hopefully all the directors had a chance to read the chapter committee charter. I think we have Kyle and Garth here. Welcome. I don't know if you have a presentation for us, but I'm going to open up the floor to you.
Edmund is here too as well from the chapter committee, so all the officers are here.
Oh, okay, great. Welcome all. Thank you very much for taking the time to come to our board meeting here. And I'm just going to open up the floor to you to see if you have any presentations or any sorry, anything else you want to display to us? Something's going on.
Actually, no, we don't. But I will say one thing we asked both Andrew and Sam was to kind of punt on this getting this approved, because we originally wrote this, you can tell from the first paragraph that we wrote it on the OWASP committee policy that was back in 2014. During the process of us writing this back in March, we were basing it off of that one. Y'all approved a new committee policy in May, which significantly changed with the addition of working groups and things like that. So it kind of significantly changed how the committee was, the scope of what committees can do and what they can't do and things like that, which is okay. It's up to, that's fine. But we wrote this one off the 2014 one. The election cycle for the committee is actually this coming January. So we're thinking of just saying, hey, this is a draft that they can not necessarily adopt, because the next committee is going to have to rejigger this to fit with the current policy. So we'd not like to, we don't want to have this approved. We'd just like to kind of push this off and say, here's a working draft for the committee charter, but in the next committee will be the one that'll be managing this, and they'll be able to write their own charter for what they're going to be focusing on, which includes a lot more of the tactical activities and activities that is asked for in the committee policy.
Okay, great.
So really, it's just kind of punt this on to the next committee.
So has this charter been open for public review yet for 30 days? And is it probably in a state that we can probably vote on it today?
Well, you all can vote on, well, like I said, it isn't applicable to the current committee policy. That's the problem we're running into. So we would like to say this, while it has been open, it has been available since March.
Mm-hmm.
But between just meeting with the board and then getting pushed to Barcelona and advisor, things like this, it's been, then you all approve the new policy. This charter is not phrased appropriately for the new policy.
Gotcha.
So I mean, it's a good working one, but it's not the final one as well. And I think the next committee should take that on as their first real ask.
Avi?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Quick question. Is the new committee officers going to be comprised of any of the existing ones? Any of you all planning on staying on another term?
We've not even opened up elections. We've barely talked about it between Garth and Edmund and myself. Okay. So we need to announce that out to leaders list and things like that to see get people on board for it.
Andrew,
yes,
I did mention to you that we should be doing elections this year for basically all the committees. Is that something that you and your team have been planning, or because I'm hearing that they're having theirs in January? So I mean, is it going to be a situation where all the committees are going to be voted on this year for leadership, or is it a case-by-case basis?
I think it's a case-by-case basis at the moment. At the end of the day, basically, we can run an election fairly simply once we've got a list of the people who need to be voted for. So, once we've got the nominees, we can check that they're OWASP members, which is required for the OWASP committee's policy, and then put that out to a vote of members to see if we can get people to vote for them. Ideally, if the chapter committee wants to do this for the beginning of January, that works well with our timing, because we've got the board of directors election coming up, and then we've got immediately thereafter we've got APSEC DC. So actually having some clear air for committee nominees to campaign and raise the support that they need, I think it'd be a good thing. So yeah, Avi?
Quick clarification, the election for committee officers don't go out to the whole membership, only to the committee members.
But we don't have a list of the committee members because there's never been a list of the committee members.
Well, it's usually done much like board officers at the meeting. There's the way it's been defined in the past.
Yeah, for people who turn up. Okay, well then it's just a show of hands.
Those that are registered as committee members. Doesn't take much to do that. So you don't need to be like a public election is my point.
The biggest problem we've got with that is that we still don't have a list of, like, for example, we know who the officers are for the various committees. The people who turn up to the actual committee meetings are the same 4 or 5 people every time. And that's a pretty closed election. I think, honestly, it might be really worthwhile raising the visibility of the elections for the committees within the membership. If it is to be a show of hands on the floor, of the day, then getting people to attend that meeting is the important thing at that stage. But the problem is that we still need to identify, are there people voting? I need to read the current committee's policy very carefully to make sure that, do they need to be a member to be able to vote? And if the answer is no, then we don't need to do anything. We can just get people to do a show of hands on the floor, and it's easy. Each committee will just run it by themselves.
But again, it's not show of hands of anybody, any random person who shows up to the meeting. It's specifically committee members, which
Again, we
admittedly is
don't.
not well defined.
Yeah,
I
we
think
don't.
we also had a discussion around who can actually vote. I think we need to get that clarified. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sam. I think you were the one who actually brought that to my attention the other day. So if we can get that clarified as well, that will make things a bit clearer for when we do have a show of hands, or however you want to you know work these votes out for the committee officers. So
Exactly.
Dawn runs our elections. So Dawn,
Okay, first off, I have to look at the new policy refresh, but it used to say the only people who can vote were officers. So it was, when it was done before, the officers had the final say of the switching. But like Avi said, it was the committee members, they all talked amongst each other. The other thing I would say, I'm not, for committee members, like Avi said, most members are not involved in these committees and don't know anything. To open it to the public, I don't know if that really would be a helpful thing, because they might not even know who these people are. That's just my personal opinion. The other thing, if you're going to do elections, they should be done in November versus, or early December. New members should start for January then, not start the elections in January, in my opinion. Like start a new year, like we do everything else, January 1. That's just my personal opinion. Or pick it for February 1 if you want. But usually we start out at the beginning of the year. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
I do think there's some unresolved issues there, and I think honestly, I'll try to catch up with Sam about the policy review process, but I think this is one of those very cloudy issues as to who gets to vote, where do they get to vote, and when do they get to vote. I think honestly, the committee process or the committee policy may not be very obvious, and we need to probably document something and just run it by the community, just make sure that we've got general buy-in.
This was raised in the past, Andrew, that the committee policy has some, not just ambiguity, but contradictions about who the committee actually is.
Yeah.
And by not having a definition of who the committee members are, being able to vote for it, regardless of that, the election for the committee officers should not be treated as the elections for the board, but rather the election for board officers done by the board, voting for board officers, same thing. Committee members vote for committee officers.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
It still then comes down to, we don't have a good list of who are the members of the various committees.
We don't have a definition.
Yeah, and therefore, how do you become a committee member, I think is a really important task. And I'd hate to see offices being vacated before we've got this answer in place.
Yeah, so can we get the policy revised so that all this stuff is clear,
Yeah.
I don't like ambiguity. Yeah.
Okay. So Sam, I think this needs to be our first one.
Yeah, I keep raising this, Andrew, because there's also conflict with the bylaws, right? With bylaws talking about the members' committees.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those bylaws, a lot of the bylaw committees are to standard board committees that most corporations have. They don't have our committee structure. So we probably need to have some sort of clarification in the bylaws about the difference between, say, for example, an audit committee, which is a standard board committee that is either standing or invoked for a time. That isn't a committee in our standard committees 2.0 or 3.0, whatever the current version is. It's not the standard type of policy committee that we're talking about here. So maybe we need to have a revision of the bylaws just to make it really clear about the difference between a board committee and a community committee.
Bylaws is talking about two types of committees, which is board committee and members committee. So obviously board committee is a committee which consists of board members.
That's right.
But members committee is the foundation members.
Yeah.
Right. So let's also put a constrainer on it with time. We can get this done within the next 30 days. The updates, and then put that out to the community for feedback, and then hopefully we can vote on this before the end of the year, so we can get the proper elections, and folks will feel a little bit better, you know, how they approach these committees. All right, great. All right. Any more questions on this point? Because we are still at the top of the list here, and we are edging up to the first hour of our meeting time here. So I'm gonna say that we need to push on. Is there any more quick questions before we move on to the next point? I would like to thank all the chapter committee members in advance for attending today and answering a few questions and providing us with some valuable.
So, Ricardo, what will be the motion, and do we need to vote on it?
I think
Because we did vote previously to table, and we see the charter was tabled several times since April this year.
What I'm hearing is that the current charter isn't in alignment with the policy. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it sounds like some more work needs to be done on the charter before we can vote on it. Is that
And
what
also,
that?
there's a predecessor of that. We need to get the committee's policy correct before they modify the policy again. And also, I think Kyle was saying that he wants the next incoming chapter committee to be working on this charter. So it may not be voted on or looked at probably until early next year. Would that be an accurate statement, Kyle?
Yes, that's what I'm targeting.
Okay.
Okay. So I think this needs to be just tabled permanently.
Okay. It will be good if we can do something with this charter this year. I don't see it as a huge amount of work. Is there anything that we can do to assist with this, Kyle? The update of the charter and/or policy, to kind of help you guys out? Because this will be great if we can get this sorted this year. So next year we have a.
I totally get the idea that you want to get this charter approved, but at the same point, I would like to have this handed to the next committee owners, because there's asking lots. This committee policy lists a lot more. What are you going to do type questions within the scope and within the charter, and we don't want to. I don't want to say hamstring them. We don't want to put gates around them to be able to say what they're going to be doing and what they're targeting for their particular. I don't want to say 2-year cycle or whatever their cycle of their ownership of the committee. So I do think pushing this one out to where it's probably in March or even a February approval makes more sense. Let them come in January, do their updates, 30 days, and then approve with the board of directors. Things like that makes more sense from the timeline.
Steve?
Yeah, I think the one thing that as a board that we can do to kind of prepare for the eventual chapter committee charter is to actually finalize the committee policy itself. So as a board, let's get that done this year if we can. That way it's a much smoother road for the chapter committee policy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thanks all. All right. Let's move on to the next point here.
Do we need a motion here, Ricardo, sir? The motion that the charter will be tabled until next year? It's a board decision, because we had a motion to vote to accept it.
Okay.
I believe you do.
Yeah. Let's do a motion that
Andrew, can you draft the motion for us? And
that we'll do it in the new year.
Okay, give me one sec. Where's the chat?
Don't need an actual motion. We could just move to table it.
Yeah, it's literally the charter chapter committee charter is tabled.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks all.
Doing a vote on it? And
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
let's
going
do
to read it as it is. Resolve the the charter committee charter. The chapter committee charter is tabled. The list that I have in front of me is Steve,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
okay, Sam,
Yes.
Ashwini,
Yes.
Avi,
Yes.
Diego,
Yes.
and myself is a yes, and it passes 7-0. All right. Let's move on to our next item,
Mhm.
which is the old EU entity, and it's a
Yes.
update by Andrew. And if we can keep this one to about 5-10 minutes, it'll be great.
Oh, be less than that.
Oh,
Um,
great.
Well, not great. My goal is for this coming month is as part of the reprioritization, just making sure that things that need to happen actually happen, is for the actual entity to start its winding up process legally. I want to get the existing directors, the 3 existing directors, to go to Belgium. I need to organize that, and we will fund their flights and accommodation to get it done. To get the check into the hands of the accountants who hold the power of attorney to close the entity. And that is where it's at the moment. The reality is that this entity has got to the end of the road from the Belgian government's point of view, so it needs to happen. There isn't much more to be said about this. The actual accountants are basically demanding a phone call. They're only available 3 days a week. And the person I need to speak to often isn't in the office, which is very frustrating. So I'm glad we're moving away from these accountants. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
good. Thank you.
Yes, they're not
You-
going to be our new accountants.
Okay, so
Okay.
do you expect that this will be done next month? This will be finished and
The Belgian government seems to take an awful long time to do anything. I will make sure that our part of it is done by then.
okay.
That is what I promise, is that essentially,
So I'm essentially saying that the check will be in the hand of our accountant by sometime next month. This is what I took from what you just said. Am I
yeah,
right
I
in
need them
saying
to
that?
go to ING. I need them to go to ING somewhere in Belgium. Easiest place is in Brussels itself, and
Mhm,
get the check. I'm assuming there'll be a check,
mhm.
and give it to the accountants. I don't see this as being very hard. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, the last time we tried to organize this, they actually actively refused to meet with Avi. So let's see what we can do.
Alrighty.
Okay. The new entity update. We've had a little bit of, there's been no movement from the Belgian government, but we have had a lot of pushback from Regis, our office location. We need to do know your customer checks. And so Diego and Ashwini, we need to provide our identity documents and a resident of like some sort of proof of residency to Regis by the 9th of September. I will get to you as soon as I possibly can with all of the lovely details. The reality is that willing to try the EU folks again. Maybe time they'll get it right. But effectively, the know your customer stuff, they're really looking for the new entities directors to show their identity. And that will allow us to keep this open. We would have expected the Belgian government to have said yes to this by now, but we've obviously hit the European holidays and they just have not said anything. So we haven't heard from the Belgian government since they last asked us to change the name of the of the foundation. We've not heard hi or hair of them. I checked it late last week. Still not registered, and as far as I can tell, it's still not registered right now. So until we get it registered, this is a very theoretical thing. Sam.
I think I've erased this as well, right? So is there an SLA? Because all the government services all around the world do have an SLA on the response. And I feel this has been now dragging on since I think April or May.
So we've
And the
submitted all the
original date
paper.
was given. Yeah. So
Yeah.
is there an SLA? And also the question is, can we get our Belgian entity proposed directors to help the people actually based on them? Maybe they can advise.
Yeah.
Because month after month, Andrew, any update we're hearing from you that you keep checking the Belgian government website and there is no update on whether it's been registered or not. Maybe they're waiting for some documentation from us that we haven't submitted. This is why it's causing the delay, because we need to understand the SLAs and the timelines.
Okay. I will reach out to VAT Desk and Maxim or Ram. Both of those guys are easily available, VAT Desk and Ram, and they've been very responsive. I will get back to you and get back to you on the global board list within the next 24 to 48 hours if there is an SLA. I don't believe there is an SLA. But I don't know. They may know. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if we can just get that confirmed.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions on this point? I think we're probably safe to move on to the JIRA and working group status update.
I sort of provided this during the executive director update. I forgot that this was actually a part of the thing. The reality is that I'm going to be working with Christian to push through the ones that we've actually already got. It needs to be basically the same as the OWASP Top 10 project, which has got a site plus a GitHub repo for them to work in and then get them to meet. So the one that I'm personally responsible for, the funding one, I will bring that and we'll get a meeting to happen sometime in September.
Yes,
So we can start getting that going. Other than that, I don't know that there's much more to be said that hasn't already been said.
All right.
So shall we move on?
Yes, unless there's any questions, anyone? All right. Let's move on to the discussion on proposed mission impact reporting and executive review policy. So I see that a draft policy has been created. I had the opportunity to read through it very briefly. I think it was yesterday. Hopefully all the other directors have either read it and or contributed to the document. And I think Steve, you kind of led the charge on this one. Do you want to kind of walk us through any highlights that you want to raise or?
Certainly. Just kind of stepping back a little bit, and I promise I won't take too long. The general goal of this um, is to really persuade future boards. Obviously, we can't mandate that future boards do anything, but if we have policy, I think it would be good so that we have an annual review process. This year, I believe, is the first year we've actually established OKRs for Andrew. And Andrew is being measured against those OKRs. That's one part of this. The other part of that is, we've got the new website. One of the things that we've historically talked about is really having an annual report in the form of not just chapters and projects and funds and that sort of thing, but what kind of impact are we actually making with respect to our mission, right? And we can measure that, right? And so this policy tries to establish a framework where this board, future boards, etc., will start collecting those metrics, right? And it establishes some timelines for when those should be done on a yearly basis, for example, in the case of Andrew, right? So that we can get in this mindset of continuous improvement. I feel as though all prior boards didn't really subscribe to that continuous improvement, or at least lay the foundation for that continuous mindset, so that future boards could actually carry that torch forward. This is the first foray into that being a reality.
This is awesome. The only question I had, Steve, if you wouldn't mind scrolling on a bit, Andrew, is that I see where we do evaluations as a board, starting on Q1, but we also start the new OKRs around the same time as well. And from a perspective that there might be board members who actually roll off the board, Do we want to push the evaluation portion back so that we have all the directors present for that year to do that assessment? Or are we all fine with that being pushed right around the same time and potential for directors who worked with Andrew during that period who may or may not have fallen off the board in that time frame? Would it make sense?
Yeah, the thinking there, and there is no right or wrong answer, but the thinking there was that I wanted to give Andrew or whoever the ED is a full calendar year to execute against those OKRs. Now, December is a busy month for a lot of the world. The last 2 weeks of the month are kind of a write-off. Now, if we wanted to move the review of those OKRs into December, it would have to be the first 2 weeks of the month, which might be okay, right? If you haven't done an OKR by then, you're probably not going to get it done. But that's the reason why I put it in January. But I mean, the details in terms of the dates, I think we can debate offline. I don't think we need to take board meetings for this. But that was kind of the thinking process. Again, I'm not really married to any of the dates per se. What I am really married to is the concept that we have some kind of transparency and accountability framework going forward.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Avi.
Sorry. I actually have two questions. Number one, I don't see anything here, and again, I just read it through it rather quickly, so I might have missed it, about the board reviewing board reviewing itself, which is something we also talked about that would be a good idea towards the end of the year, which again is the end of the term for about half the board. I think it would be a good idea to put in that also, not just to review the ED's OKRs, but also to review the board's performance at the end of each year. And it would make sense to combine that. So going to what you said, Steve, I think it does make sense the beginning of December.
Okay.
That's the one thing. Other than that, I really like what I did see here, but I'm curious about one thing. Does this need to be a policy? To me, this feels more like an operational, not operational, more of a procedure or a handbook type of thing, because we're basically specifying what the board needs to do.
The auditors asked for something very similar to this, by the way. So to evaluate executive performance. So I do think that having this would actually fill a gap in our current audit that we don't currently have in place. So as much as it feels like a process, and I totally agree with you that it is basically a process, it might be worth defining it as a policy.
Yeah, it's defined and put there. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right.
So my ask is that we kind of work on this online, offline. And if we can iterate on this and get it to a state that we all kind of are happy with in the next month or two, I think that would be a phenomenal process, because I'd like to actually execute on this policy if we say December, it's December. That way we can actually evaluate Andrew for his OKRs that he's had this year at the end of the year. So that's my goal.
So my only comment, Steve, is as much as I like this, I mean, it does give me something that I can actually execute on, which is great. I haven't collected some of these statistics since the beginning of the year, so it might be difficult to actually collect some of them, such as like outright chapter numbers. We do have records of member numbers and things like that at the various points in time, but some of the metrics may not be accurate. And I just want to make sure that in that first year of this coming in, that we sort of have some sort of leeway there. That's all.
Agreed.
Yep. Makes sense. Just to confirm something, I've been asking you to collect a bunch of metrics during the year so that we can have kind of more of a summary for the directors to make decisions off. Is that happening, or?
So the sort of metrics that we're sort of collecting at the moment are the ones that are actually in the board summaries. So if you see a graph or something similar, we don't change those. Like we start a new one every month. So I can go back and create a summary of things like, for example, our membership numbers or things like that very, very easily. Whereas if we were going on financial stuff, we would just pull a report from QuickBooks and make something out of it from there. Are there specific things that you're looking for that we haven't been presenting so far that are like, for example, I'm just going to pull one out of the top of my hat, the like social media engagement that we're not tracking at this very moment. What sort of metrics have you not seen in the board summary reports that you would like to see? Is that something you would like to like maybe respond at a later time?
Well, I think it would be valuable for directors to look at more like graphs and have more comparisons from now and like previous years of stuff. That gives us an indication of things that are happening. There are a lot of words in a lot of these presentations. Like right now, you have a lot of words on the screen. It's almost overwhelming. And considering that we're like 1 hour and almost a quarter into our meeting time here, it's a lot to try to digest in a short amount of time. So to have things summarized and the quick comparisons, I think will help us. So that's the type of stuff I mean. And if you want some more examples, I have to look through them myself. I can't for the life of me know what's in that stuff right now that I haven't seen. So I'll make some suggestions for you. But yeah, I was just wondering if you were collecting more metrics or considering the presentation like I mentioned a while back for the directors.
Yeah, so what we need to do is I think for the really important ones where it's about our community size, our community impact, and things like that, that's where we sort of need to collect more metrics. And it's very hard when we didn't collect them in the past to go back and compare them to previous years. But once we start collecting them, we'll be able to do that in future years. But I think certainly this is definitely an area for improvement. I think some of them, like membership numbers and whatnot, that are very simple and very straightforward. Financial, very straightforward. Others, like the number of project releases we've had this year, that's ephemeral. It's actually really hard to track that down. We don't have a good process for projects to tell us that they've actually released a new version, and we've had plenty of projects release things in 2025. So that's an example of our impact is that we've released new versions of our major flagships, for example, AMAS. The top 10 is coming out later this year. But there is no standard defined process for a project to say, hey, we've released a new version, please track us. We've never collected that information, and I think it's one of those things that it'd be very important to put into an annual review, like the proposed annual impact review that Steve's proposed in this.
Yeah, I think this year we can keep it simple because again, we don't have a lot of the more complicated metrics. This is a topic that that I'm working on the agenda for November. This is a topic that I am putting on the agenda for November because I want to see not just like quantitative metrics, but more qualitative metrics as well in the form of KPIs. So let's discuss this in November to figure out what metrics that we actually want from a strategic point of view, and just take what we can get at least initially this year.
Yeah. Again, it may require us to encourage people who are releasing a new version. This is the way you do a release at OWASP. We don't currently force any project to do anything like that. They don't even have to tell us they've done a new release. They just release.
Yeah, great. Can we move on to the next point if there are no more questions or comments on this one? Yeah, okay. And this is a discussion on the proposed director qualification and election policy changes. Had the opportunity to contribute to this document. Thank you very much, Evie. But yeah, if you want to walk us through any highlights or
Yeah,
Sure.
Avi, I'm going to give you co-host so you can present while I find the actual document.
I'll
It's
just share
not-
that right here in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I thought the link up top.
The
worked.
link's broken. I'll fix it. Okay.
So I'll zoom out for a moment. There were a few goals of this rewrite. First of all, it was a bit written in the narrative and less as a policy. So first, just to clean it up and make order. And that's the first thing I did. I reordered it and restructured it. The second thing is to tighten some of the qualifications and requirements for candidates and for board directors. And thirdly, to communicate better what is expected from candidates and directors, not just the requirements, but just so they have an idea of what they're getting into. This is something that we've heard from a few elections going on. The people are surprised or not exactly knowing what they're going into. So some of it is just slight rewrite, and I try to be very careful about tracking the changes other than reordering the sections. Just FYI, that just got to be too messy. So continue scrolling down if you don't mind. I broke this down into two parts: the qualifications and requirements of candidates and directors, and separately from that, the process itself. Yes, Ashwini?
No, I let you continue and ask at the end, right? Once you've done.
Okay.
I had questions on how we vote and what's changing with that. Yeah.
Okay. So the first section is the basic qualifications for someone to be able to stand. Till now, it is simply paying $50 once, 12 months ago, and being in good standing. We all realize that we do kind of need a little bit more than that to avoid simple popularity contests, which has often been the case. And I think there is common feeling that a lot of people don't vote because it's a popularity contest, unless they specifically want to support a candidate. So a lot of it is just to make sure that the having strong commitment, as it says in ASD, as you pointed out, and a few other things like this. And to clarify, what is actually supposed to happen here. One of the big additions here is something that we discussed a couple of times in in-person meetings in the past, is a subsection D here, is having an actual demonstrable history of actually contributing and volunteering with OWASP. I tried listing out the main high-level things. There have been a few other suggestions. Sam suggested also outside of OWASP. If you're an active volunteer and want to move to OWASP, that's, I think, something worth discussing. I see the point of it, but I don't think it's that straightforward. Maybe scroll down a bit more. Let's see. One other thing here is subsection F, public-facing persona. It was raised that certain people are very private and personal and don't want to engage in a public community, which might be a problem. I personally had trouble with how I was phrasing this, and I was actually commented asking for clarifying that. Harold, we don't hate introverts here. Most of us, I think, are introverts. So yeah, it's just a question of being on the board means you are a public persona, and we need to be able to engage with the community. So please do make changes or comments or suggestions there what to change. One other thing.
Questions? Oh, sorry, we've got a few hands.
I just want to address number G before we pause for questions here. A lot of times people, there have been many people that have nominated themselves, gone through the validation process, and then basically, nah, it's too much work, I can't be bothered, even before they get on the board or even after they're on the board. So I just wanted to call that out. And H, I realized at the last second that if somebody violated code of conduct, that should be an issue here as well. So I added that.
It's a good one.
Ashwini, you were the first one with your hand up.
Yes, so I read a comment about change in how we vote. I think it's called preferential voting or rank based. I was just wondering how that works.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. I just wanted to pause if there's any questions on this. Sorry. Don?
Excuse me. First, this is not for this year's election, correct? Because I already started the election.
That is a very good point. I think it's kind of tricky to push that in right now, especially because it still needs to go 30 days process. Ricardo, do you or Sam, the secretary, do you think otherwise?
I agree with that. It's a bit to kind of. Yeah.
that makes me happy. It's like, oh no.
This year, Don, we will not make the timelines. We already discussed this, right? Because the election timelines start from August 15th. So
Yeah.
which was 11
The
days
other,
ago.
okay, thank you. The other thing I just throw out there, there are some things like you say have to be active, different things like that. Whatever you decide, can you really make it very clarified? Because then it becomes a matter of opinion. Like, so who's going to review these submissions? Like, I get them, and basically I check, are they a member, blah, 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 certain things. But when you say they have to be active in social, certain things, I'm really going to have things I can verify it. So it's not like everything has to go back to the board for you to decide, that it's really, there's some way for me to check the qualifications, if that makes sense.
100%
Okay.
agree with that. Things like being a leader of a chapter, that's not subjective.
Right. Obviously, I can check that and things, but when some of the things active on social media things, it's a little, you know.
I did not say active on social media. I said maintain a profile.
Okay, then I misread
That's
it.
easy to
Okay.
check. Do I have a LinkedIn profile? And I also, I'm not specifying that it has to be LinkedIn. OWASP Glue Up also counts as a public profile.
Okay, so those are the things, yeah. So if it just clarified that way, so I have a place that I know I can verify people.
Yeah, 100%.
That's my only concern. Thank you.
Harold?
The only things that I really have some problems with in here are the qualifications. I don't know that restricting qualifications when it's already pretty open, right? It's just you got to be a member. And yet if you restrict it further, you just end up lowering the number of people who are going to be available to actually do the board membership.
So, Harold, one thing that I've heard from many people is they would like to be more active, but not going to bother running in the election because it's just a popularity contest.
I don't know that this solves that, because by making it the people who are the leaders, et cetera, you're just restricting it to what used to be referred to as the old boys club, that we know that that's a little bit outdated, but that was what it was used to be called.
Referred to as the what?
The old boys club. You know,
Oh.
it's the people who've always been there, who will always be the same people. So you end up having that issue. The other problem I have is that what happens if the way people volunteer, what they want to do for volunteerism is to be on the board? I mean, that is their way of volunteering. So now you've restricted it to just people who do other things.
I think you are pointing out a very good issue. And I think there's a philosophical discussion that we'd have to, take offline or in person at some point. But my point is exactly that. If the only thing that a person wants to do is be on the board, it's likely they are not interested in volunteerism. It's likely if it's the only thing they're doing, it's likely they are looking for the prestige or the resume or things like that. And we've had that in the past more than once. Sure. Andrew probably can give you a list of of some folks like that.
I'm not going to say
and
the
he's not going
names,
to.
I totally back Harvey on this one.
It has happened quite a bit.
Doesn't it go against, like, remember we did the board source training before onboarding, and it specifically had an example wherein there was a question, right? The quiz at the end, which spoke about if you had to choose between somebody who's been around for a really long time within the organization versus somebody who's too busy and can just come around for the meetings, etc., who's the better option, right? The answer was somebody who's too busy, because they would give a fresh pair of eyes and perspective, because all we expect them to do is provide strategical inputs, right, and get to at least push towards them. So how does actually being it goes against a typical charity board principles, at least as per the training that I've seen. So I don't know about philosophy really, but it's more about, boils down to the principle itself.
I would disagree with that characterization that the board members just show up to the meetings, provide some input, and then go away. It is
I'm not saying provide some input. I'm talking about strategy, right? And maybe somebody who's really good with strategy has been has not been involved as a chapter leader or a compliance officer, but maybe they can contribute better in terms of strategy. So how does tying being a leader of a chapter or compliance really help in the cause of strategy or having to be on the board, right? I mean, there has to be some sort of reasoning as to why we need that, right? I mean, it's just acting as a gatekeeping thing because the people who have always been involved, people who have always been active in the community over the last 20 years, maybe would get a chance to be on the board, right? That's not opening up the gate to somebody who can just contribute in terms of strategy and drive it to somebody new who's not been able to involve as much in terms of being a chapter leader. Maybe they're not a chapter leader, but maybe they support the chapter leader a lot. Things like that. And they might not be as popular within the chapter itself, but they still would want to apply. So you're just taking away the chance and intent for so many n number of people. It's
So
yeah. So it's
I'll address two things. Why is it important? Because it's not just about showing up to the meetings and giving strategic input. It's being familiar with the community. It's a very wide open community with a lot of branches to this. But if you're not enmeshed in the community in some way, then again, this is a position. You don't have to agree with me, but I don't think that somebody that is not part of the community should be on the board. That's not what we want. You have great strategic input. That's great. Don't need to be on the board for that. That's the advisory council that we were talking about separately from that. The other thing I want to point out, it's not necessarily people that have been around forever. It's not a requirement of being here for 20 years or being the first person in that region to be an OS member. It's a very low bar, in my opinion. 9 months in the past year, or 2 years, or 24 months in the past 6 years. And we can argue about those numbers. It could be 6 months, whatever. But the point is, it's not a high bar. And that is very open to additional people to come in. It's just you need to do a little bit of work before you can't show up the first day at OWASP and say, I'm in charge now. That's my opinion.
Yep. Sorry, Ashwini, you still have some.
about being a compliance officer, a committee member, or a local AppSec organizer or conference, chapter lead, things like that, right? So that is the high bar, is what I was talking about, not about being around for 9 months and you can be active in the community, you can know people, you can be embedded in the community without having those 5 points met, right?
You need to actually do something. You can't be a feeler. You can't just show up to free meetings, eat some pizza, and say, "Well, now I want to be on the board." All I'm saying here, and you can argue with the specific contribution forms or the length. All I'm saying is prove that you're actually willing to do something, some volunteerism, before being put into the position. And again, this is something that we can discuss at length. I don't think we need to litigate this here. Harold?
Going with your last statement.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. I just want to just simply say everybody who we've had on the board who has had that sort of background you've been talking about, Ashwini, that has that more strategic view, we've always had problems with those candidates. They either didn't understand our community well enough to be able to get their agenda through, and they really lost motivation, and in the end they just stopped doing the pre-reading. They didn't turn up to the meetings prepared, and they were very ineffectual board candidates. I really do think you need to understand our community to be able to push through the reforms and change that's necessary to keep the place alive. For example, my predecessor pushed through a couple of policies that I've never seen a board vote down a policy suggested by an executive director before, and yet that happened. You've got to understand our community to be able to help provide a strategy for it. It doesn't mean you have to agree with the current community. You just have to be able to prosecute your thoughts and to get them across the line with the majority of your co-board members. And I think having that sort of familiarity and being present in the community gives you an edge. And honestly, the members tend to vote for people who are a part of our community. So maybe putting it in as a requirement and making those requirements reasonable, I think is the thing. I don't disagree with Avi's list. Maybe it needs more things, but I don't think having people who aren't part of our community is the right thing here.
I'm all for having people within the community, right? So that's important, yes. But I do think like having a member page and being on the debate are enough qualifiers to identify how well this person has been embedded and what their previous contributions have been and what they can provide in the future, and take a call on that. I was just looking at those 5 points. Maybe we could rephrase it and discuss further on it, and take it
Yeah,
from
I
there.
think so.
I'm in complete alignment with yes, they have to very much be an active community member. It's just that they might not have those titles of being a chapter leader, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with what Andrew said. We can negotiate what that list comprises and how long it is, but I think it's clear that something is necessary there. I don't want to do a full read here of the whole policy and all the changes. I try to be very clear on what I actually changed. The second section is for those that actually do get elected or appointed. In the case of a replacement, very important to note this. They might not be going through the candidate section, and that's up to the board to decide. So additional things that will be required. I did try to put in the thing that we talked about last year and the year before that, that kind of kept getting stuck between conflict and multiple people from the same company, and putting in an exception, in an explicit exception process there for cases where it's not relevant. But again, the cases like hypothetically, my CTO Josh works at a very small company with me. If we were both on the board, that would be a problem. Not to mention that I am his boss. And again, this is something that has been discussed multiple times, and I am very open to changing the phrasing here, because there's a lot of nuance here.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem, like, I worked at a Big Four. We had a really, really, really big register of all the companies to work out conflicts. How do you deal with, and I don't think this deals with it properly, someone who works for Microsoft and then a person who works for GitHub, same company, but different parts of the company.
Legally speaking, it's not the same company.
Yeah, but are they? This is the thing, there's a rabbit warren here.
Sure. And this is something that was raised. I thought I managed to avoid that by the definition. And again, open to changing that. In my opinion, it shouldn't matter. That's not the kind of conflict we're worried about.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But I think we need to nuance this a bit. Section A3 is additional things for, again, commitment. So potential candidates know what they are getting into and what is expected from them and what is required from them. Attendance, of course, the in-person meetings as well, which wasn't explicitly listed clearly before as well. Yeah. And so on.
National travel.
And of course, I changed a lot of the language to policy language. Should and must. Okay. Finally, I added there's another section here of if you're going to be a board officer, what else is required and expected. And again, just to clarify this, because a lot of candidates are not familiar with that. And A5, I think, was pretty much there before. Okay. Finally, in section B, is the process, again, clarified, cleaned it up a bit, and added a few things in. Put a requirement to fill out the questions on the candidate page, which hasn't been before. And a lot of candidates left their page mostly empty, which kind of indicates that you're not going to be taking the directorship seriously either. I also added in the suggestion for, the open call for questions, also put in standard questions, that because every year we have the same questions over and over again. So there should be the standard set plus topical issues raised by the community, and in addition suggested a town hall or a facilitated debate. When we've done that, that has worked really well. I don't want to prescribe that. I just think that something like that should be. so that when you're voting for somebody, you've actually seen them in action. Dawn?
Excuse me. If someone submits for the board and they do not fill in all the requirements on the page, they're not on the ballot. They don't move
Right,
forward.
but you can
Yes,
fill
we
in the
have.
page very lacklusterly and not actually put real details in there.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, I just wanted to know that if they don't, like, if their bio is missing, the picture's missing, it doesn't go through right now.
Yeah. Okay. B2 is the timeline, mostly the same. I cleaned it up a bit and put a few other things in there. Again, expectations and what is there. The voter requirements cleaned up, not much there, just clarified that as well. Voting, Shmini was asking about this. I suggested in B4 to change the method of voting. This is actually something that I've been pestering the board since I think Matt was the acting executive director. There are, for those that have gone down the rabbit hole of learning different voting methods, it's very rich. There's a lot of different interesting things, but STV is considered the better one, the more ethical and representative one. I linked a few things in the comments around what is STV, what does that mean, ranked choice or preferential. Basically, the idea is instead of voting for these are the three people that I want, and whoever gets the most gets in, and then, well, I really don't want that one, so I need to make sure to, well, that one's going to get in and start doing that. You rank, or rather put it in the order of all the candidates in the order that you want. You don't have to vote for all of them, just the ones that you do want in the order. And the way they count it is the ones that the most people will accept them in their top first, second, or third choice. It's actually very interesting mathematical for if you want to go down that hole of learning election security. There's a lot of interesting things there. Fair warning, it is a rabbit hole. I would actually suggest there's some fantastic videos on YouTube by CGP Grey that actually explains it really well. I'm happy to share those with you if you are interested in that. If there is consensus of even considering to make this change.
Operationally, we would need to probably look into whether simple voting actually supports this voting method.
Yep, already looked into it. They do support that with a few different configuration options. Again, linked in the comments as well.
Okay, great.
Yep. Harold?
Nope,
Just wanted to say that this, hurts my United States voting kind of sensibilities, but
I know. United States elections are actually pointed to by democracy experts as a really bad way of doing it.
Yeah.
Here too, by the way.
Let's just maybe not use the methods that are used in the United States as being representative democracy at the moment. Let's move on. The main thing from my point of view is that the software supports it, and I don't mind as long as we communicate the change to the community. I think that's actually really important because it is a change to the first past the post, which is what we've got at the moment. And some people are very familiar with first past the post. It's how we've done it since 2012. Yeah.
So I also linked in the comments to the an electoral reform site. It explains why this is the better choice. And again, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, if you don't want to go down that rabbit hole, like Andrew said, if simply voting supports it, it doesn't actually change that much conceptually if you don't care about how the nuances about that and the minutia. But yeah. All right, B5 just again cleaned up some of the language and made clear how that works, and put it in a section of B6 again so candidates know what to expect after they get elected, or after they elected, what happens between the election and taking their seat, and stuff needs to happen in that gap. Again, candidates are often surprised by, oh, I'm supposed to do work before January 1st. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to happen there. And B7, fraud and non-ethical conduct.
Okay.
In my opinion, we spent way too much time discussing this right now. I think everybody needs to go through this and argue about this on paper. Any verbal questions before we move on?
Okay. Let's thank you very much. Let's move on then. We have an events policy minor changes. So looks like it's a pull request right now.
It is.
Has everyone actually viewed this document? And oh, the link doesn't work.
No, I'm pulling it up now.
Okay.
Oh,
Any
actually,
questions
it's
while we wait for that? Anyone? Discussion points?
okay. This probably needs merging into the actual events policy. I do propose that instead of voting on this month, I know that would make the events team life a lot easier, but I do believe that there's language in the existing events policy that contradicts this policy. And I think we just need to clarify it so that it's actually simpler. So I would suggest that I take this with the other policies that we've talked about that needs to go ahead within the next 30 days to Sam as being one of the ones that we put out there. I'll put together a combined events policy that incorporates this change. But this is the change that's being proposed. Has the board had a chance to? Well, no, you haven't because you haven't had a link that worked. I'm sorry. Basically, we need to make sure that events that have substantial deposits that need to be paid, they need to be in the budget for the previous year. Otherwise, say for example, we decided to go ahead with AppSec Cali. AppSec Cali has no actual funding in this year's budget to allow it to be the deposit to be paid. I'd have to work with Harold. If it goes over $100,000, I have to go to a board vote. That's not ideal. It'd be much better if the larger AppSec Day events, and we do have some that have deposits and also sponsorship and income. We need to have a P&L created for them in our accounting system. There is a lot of reasons why we need to have this timeline. However, there are other things that are in here that are setting SLAs for the actual events being done. We have had plenty of events, AppSec days, that have been proposed for like 3 months away from the time they propose to run them, and it's just unrealistic. Anybody who's ever run an event knows that it takes more than 3 months to set something up. So, yeah, Sam.
Yeah, actually, I have a question about that, Andrew, because obviously, according to the proposal, is that it says that it must be submitted by September 1st, the year prior to the event taking place. Does that mean, for example, if an event is taking place on the 1st of January 2026, it must be approved by September 1st, 2025? That is still 3 months,
Yeah, I know. No, September 1's our budgeting time. That's when I
Yeah.
propose that, like we've always tried to start our budget process now.
Yeah.
And we need to have it ready for a draft review in the November board meeting and preferably approved in no later than January's board meeting the following year. So the reality is that if the budget's not approved, but they've put the allocation in, then I think honestly we need to say something about that time. And I think that's one of the things that this particular policy needs more air. It needs to get that sort of feedback. So I propose that you and I get together, Sam. We merge this document into one events policy and then put the events policy out for review with the community. I think it'd be a reasonably easy thing to get in front of the board for the October board meeting.
Perfect. Yep, let's do that. Yep, let's do that. And then I think we have an executive session. I know it's 9 minutes until the top of the hour. So if any,
I think we had two proposed changes to the agenda, one from yourself, one from me, and probably we'll need to table them until
I'm
the
gonna table
next one, right?
mine. If you want to discuss yours today, you certainly can have 5 minutes. But remember, we do have an executive session.
No, let's table it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So we'll
because
table those last two to the September meeting. So let's just do the adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, winner chicken dinner. It is moved and seconded to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
I
Aye.
Cool. Let's go to executive session if you wouldn't mind cutting that recording off.
Yeah, doing it.
All right. I'd like to thank
Recording.
all the staff for being here and hanging in there.